It's day 2 of the prolonged Federal Executive Council meeting, which continued from Monday due to the large number of items on the agenda after a 7-week hiatus. Upon conclusion, several approvals were granted, including a housing and infrastructure investment initiative.
Given where we are in terms of stabilization, it is time to focus on economic growth. And one of the key drivers of economic growth is investment in infrastructure, in housing, power, rail, roads, water transport, even technology. And so, in conversation, in consultation, collaboration, and cooperation with the private sector, we are now able to announce, and with the full knowledge and support of all parties, that there will be an initiative to fund growth through investment in infrastructure, including housing, provision of mortgages, long-term mortgages, 25-year mortgages at relatively low interest rates. Initially, of course, the government will stand back and provide some support, particularly in this era of high interest rates.
He explains further how the government, on its part, hopes to fund the initiative and at what interest rates.
And you say, where will the resources come from? Nigeria is resilient, Nigerians are resilient, and the fact is that even before we start looking to foreign investors, we start looking to foreign funding, there is available in Nigeria long-term funds to fund infrastructure projects. And it's within the pension, life insurance, and investment fund industry generally. There is upwards of 20 trillion naira available, and much of it is in short-term funding that it doesn't need to be. Pension money is long-term. Talking about, give or take, 12%. I would say give or take 12% should be the target that we aim at, something that's affordable. And it will take the creativity of the whole, all the stakeholders.
For the Ministry of Works, 12 projects got the green light, including Section 2 of the controversial Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road. The minister maintains that due process has been followed in constructing the 700 kilometers road to cut across 9 states.
FEC also awarded Section 2 of Phase 1 of the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. Let me just throw a little light on this project, against what anybody might be saying. First and foremost is that ESIA was obtained by Ministry of Works from the Ministry of Environment, 23rd of December 2023. That's the first approval. And second approval came in March 28 and further renewed in April 24th, all this year.
Other projects include the Lokoja Benin Road under the tax credit scheme and 4 other intervention projects, while the Federal Capital Territory received over 96 billion naira for 4 projects.
The first approval is for the award of contract for the development of bus terminal and other transportation facilities in the Capital Territory. Secondly is the approval for the award of contract for the construction of Court of Appeal, Abuja Division. And number 3 is approval for the award of contracts for the provision of security operations and maintenance of backup generator for the street lights along Presidential Routes and Villa Gate 8, Federal Capital City. And lastly, the 4th approval is for the upgrading of Koitai-Ebu Road in Kwali Area Council. The first one for the bus terminal, it was awarded at the cost of 51 billion 25,172,424 naira 96 kobo.
Well, the 2-day Federal Executive Council meeting also discussed the contentious cybersecurity levy and confirms that the directive has been temporarily suspended. There were also discussions on lowering data costs in the country. From the presidential villa, Adesua Omorowan, Arise News.
Well, that's a lovely report from Adesua Omorowan, as always. Now, there are a lot of issues coming out of FEC. Obviously, when they delay FEC for 7 weeks, it's no surprise. Yes, and this is the problem with irregular governance. This is the problem with what I believe is coming out of this presidential team, is that for a very long time, we were like, when are they going to hold FEC? When they're going to hold FEC, they promised it'd be more regular. The president has been traveling. There's been all other things going on. Now we have nearly 2 months without a FEC, and therefore they now have an overload of issues to deal with. I'll start with the last thing that Adesola mentioned there, which was the cyber crime levy. This was a levy that was written in an executive bill that the president or the federal government, the presidency sent to the House, to the National Assembly. The House then passes the bill. We'll talk about the due diligence they took when they passed that levy. And afterwards, the president is now coming to say, oh, he's cancelled the levy, he's put it on hold. Well, you put it forth in the first place. In the first instance, it came from your desk. So I can't give you any kudos to backtracking on that. And
he listened to the voice of the people.
Okay, well, it's good, I guess, to be reactive, but I guess for me, I think I prefer a proactive government than a reactive government. I think you should know better in the first instance. And the issue of pension funds. Now, our pension funds I think there has been some sort of misunderstanding on social media about how our pension funds function, in that they are already being used to invest, and a lot of the pension funds are being invested in bonds, which are essentially like our state or federal government bonds and loans to the Nigerian government. However, these are lower risk, low reward. So the argument coming out now is that, these are low risk. That's why I think you're seeing maybe 6% come out of our pension funds where you can have double-digit returns. However, when you have something high risk like infrastructure, and when you have a very low trusting environment of the federal government, when you have low trust when it comes to these infrastructural projects, particularly the Lagos-Calabar highway project, which has taken up a lot of our mental space in the last couple of weeks, you cannot then ask for 20 trillion or whatever the actual number is to come out of the pension fund as investment for infrastructure projects. The risks is higher, the trust is even lower. I do not know any Nigerian that will say, you know what, yes, president, yes, government. I think I would be comfortable with you reaching into the pension fund. And I think that's how I see it. I think we can have logical arguments about, you can get much higher returns. I don't trust you with my money.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the sentiment out there by many people, and that would be very correct, especially if you have people who are retirees like I do, and who just before this whole argument about the pension thing from government have had their pension payment delayed. So if you had your pension payment delayed in the last 2 months and there's no coherent argument from Abuja, and then all of a sudden you're hearing that the government says we need to take about 20 trillion of the pension fund and invest in long-term infrastructure projects. Of course, you will be worried, for genuine reasons. And I think that that's part of why this whole thing is taking so much space in the media and, of course, on the social media. I listen carefully to what Minister Wale Edun has been saying, and I'm afraid that he hasn't convincingly broken down what people need to hear beyond beyond the little well-curated, beautiful arguments that he has put up. So that that is necessary, so that you won't fall into what in popular social media jingo, you go explain tire, that people normally say. I think that information is key. Like you said, a pension fund has always been invested one way or the other,
yes,
through bonds, federal government bonds and treasury bills. If you recall, in 2019, under the former government, the pension brouhaha was totally part of the Buhari administration. In 2019, the 2 trillion that was borrowed raised a lot of dust. And then as late as October of last year, there was even a House of Representatives committee, based on the motion form to demand for explanation on how the 10 trillion naira of the pension fund has been, loaned to the government, of course, invested in government bonds, etc., have been utilized. And that will be about 65% of the total amount in the kitty as at last year. If the total amount has grown into 20 trillion, as Minister Edo seems to be saying, what is not clear about is how much of that is still available for investment.
Yes.
You know, because already, as at October last year, lawmakers who are part of your government are saying that you have not accounted for about 10 trillion naira that are not in the coffers of PENCON and the PFA. So it is important to come clean, full disclosure, and explain in detail and in a language that people will understand, so that there won't be worries like you said about, I don't trust you with my money. Yeah. There are many things that you have claimed that you will do, but that you have not totally 100% adhered to. And therefore, if it now comes to pension money, the risk is high, which is why the Labour, TUC, practically all the retirees and those who, are also subsidizing the retirees are saying that, take it easy, be careful. Yes, we know that short-term investments are there already, but then when you are talking of controversial projects like the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road, Badagry-Sokoto Road and stuff, housing, and then all your target seems to be the remaining amount in the pension, people will be worried. Yeah. And I think that coherent and sincere explanations will go a long way in assuring people that we mean well, and that the money that will be borrowed will be utilized for the projects that they are being borrowed for. I think that will help a lot. You can't stop government, frankly speaking, from dipping their hands into the pension funds by way of loans and investment. But of course, let us know how they are being utilized. Definitely. All right, we move on. Nigeria's headline inflation rate has continued to rise to 33.69% in April 2024. It's highest since March 1996, up from 33.2% in the prior month. According to Nigeria's Bureau of Statistics, food inflation, which accounts for the bulk of the country's inflation basket, soared to 40.5% in April, compared to March's reading of 40%. Central Bank of Nigeria Governor Olayemi Cardoso, after hiking rates twice this year, indicated that interest rates will stay high for as long as necessary to bring down inflation. The Central Bank of Nigeria is scheduled to hold another rate-setting meeting next week. I mean, nobody will be surprised, frankly speaking, given that nothing of note has changed since the last time that we were discussing the galloping inflation. And for me, there's a lot of explanation needed, and not only from Yemi Cardoso of the governor of the central bank, but also from the minister who is coordinating, or who is supposed to be coordinating the economy, the Minister of Finance himself, Mr. Wale Edun. I'm not sure that we've seen them together, talk directly to the issues that we are dealing with. Different people saying different things. Even when they went to Washington the other time, for the IMF World Bank meetings, I think that they will need to do better in communicating what they are doing to the people. Yeah. There are issues that we are dealing with. Food inflation now at 40.2%. Not unusual, but of course, what are we doing to bring this down? What are we doing? When Cardoso says, for example, that interest rate will have to remain high in order to stem inflation, have we succeeded thus far? It will be 1 year of this administration. What will be the key things that you can point at in how you are supposed to be tackling inflation, tackling food inflation, tackling galloping inflation and everything? Many people will not be impressed, particularly those who look at their pocket and see that what they were buying for 1 naira exactly 1 year ago is now probably 20, 25, 30 naira. It is hard to convince an hungry man that you are doing a lot when he really can't afford it.
Definitely. And I think, what you said is absolutely right. And this is what you said early on, is that we need cohesion, we need comprehensive policy, we need them working together. Mm-hmm. Because, as you recall, earlier on, I believe it was in just this month, that the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Yemi Cardoso, had stated that like the palliative programs, you know, buying foodstuffs in large quantities by, you know, government was actually driving up food inflation. And so when you have policy that is not coherent, policy that is countering the other, you know, one arm, it seems, is not really working in tangent with the other arm, then how can we actually come and expect actual results
from the same government?
From the same government. And, you know, if the same government is keeping the borders closed, you can't reduce your the price of food that way. If the same government is buying foodstuff in bulk and pushing food inflation higher, then you also have to ask, like, how much can we expect from the ministers, the coordinating minister and the CBN minister? Of course, we expect them to do their job. Of course, we expect them to, you know, as with the interest rates and try their hardest, right, to bring the inflation down. However, when we have actions by the same government that are counterproductive or counterintuitive to it, then we cannot expect any different results. And that, I think, is one of the most critical complaints about the Tinubu administration, is that you are asking us to expect different results, but you are doing things the way they have been done before. Where is the brain box, the new thinking, the different, you know, the different plan, the renewed hope that you promised the Nigerian people? Things cannot be as they were, and then you expect us to have hope in the Naira and have hope that inflation will come down. We must see that your workings are different, unless, as you said, you just go explain tire. Well, President Bola Tinubu has approved the release of 90 billion Naira to subsidize the cost of this year's Hajj pilgrimage. This was according to Nigeria's Vice President, Kashim Shettima, who made the announcement during the inaugural Hajj airlift at the Sir Ahmadu Bello International Airport in Birnin Kebbi, the capital of Kebbi State, on Wednesday. He emphasized the president's commitment to religious pilgrimage, stating that it aligns with government policies aimed at fostering peaceful coexistence and social harmony among Nigeria's diverse populace. He urged intending pilgrims to pray for the success of the administration and to act as good ambassadors for Nigeria by diligently observing all Hajj protocols in Saudi Arabia.
The President approved the release of 90 billion Naira to subsidize the cost of pilgrimage for this year's Hajj. Therefore, I urge you not to relent in praying for the success of this administration, for the peace and progress of our country that we are proud to call our motherland.
Interesting, isn't it? I mean, Vice President Kashim Shettima has not said anything new. He has only affirmed, you know, what has been public, you know, knowledge for a long time. You'll recall, Adesua, that a lot of people have been expressing disappointment since the beginning of this year, I believe, when it became public knowledge that the president had approved 90 billion naira to subsidize pilgrims, you know, intending pilgrims to Saudi Arabia to perform the Hajj. So what the vice president has done is to politicize it, you know, and to say that his government, the government that he's part of which is number 2, has scored a political point by releasing taxpayers' money to the tune of 90 billion naira to individuals who are going on a private religious pilgrimage. Not just private, to individuals whose injunction, frankly speaking, is to only proceed on such spiritual journeys if they had the means. And therefore, isn't it interesting, therefore, that our leaders who run on Muslim ticket, both of them Muslims, who ought to know what the injunction says, that don't even bother if you can't afford it, except, of course, there's assistance from individuals or something like that. And that even the supplications that you will be going for will have amounted to null and void if there's anything untoward as to how you are proceeding, you know, on that journey. And isn't it funny, therefore, that we will have two Muslims as president and as vice president supporting, dipping their hands into the till to subsidize those who want to go to a holy land to go and pray. I think it is unfair. I think it is not just right. It is not right for Nigerian people. I also believe that it is not right for those who are going. I'm not so sure about how poor those who are going there are, because the injunction is that if you're too poor to afford it, pray at home. Your prayers will be hard. And so if you're saying that the calculation from what we have had is that about between 1.4 and 1.6 million naira is what is coming out of government to subsidize each person going, because you will require about 6 million to proceed, then there's no basis for whoever is going, you know, to there at all. If you have your money, if it is 6 million or whatever, and you think that this is something that you need to do at this point, by all means do so, you know. But then to now take the money from federal government's account, and we are celebrating it as if it's an achievement, I think it's something that the Nigerian government should apologize about and should assure Nigerians that it will not happen again. Because what this means, and from what people have been saying, is that you will also have to demonstrate the same gesture to the Christians. And maybe to an extent, because we are a secular state, we are not just a Christian and Muslim country, we're a secular state. The Onisheshis, you know, the traditionalists, have succeeded, at least in many parts, many states of the country, in recognizing August 20 as the Sheshe Day, just like others celebrate Christmas and celebrate Salah. Will you therefore also approve another 90 billion to those who worship Ifas and Orumilas and Shogos and Oguns to go wherever they choose to go, whether Cuba or Brazil or Shoshubo Grove? And so it becomes a theater of the absurd when we have to deal with religion, you know, in this manner. Money that will essentially go to support the tourism industry, tourism and infrastructure industry of the countries that they are going to. If you look at how much Saudi Arabia on the one hand and Israel on the other hand make from international pilgrims, you will be amazed.
We're funding tourism for them.
We're funding tourism for them. But like I said, if it is coming from individuals' pocket and you believe that this is something that you need to do, who are we to question you? Go and support their tourism and infrastructure development. But it shouldn't come from money that you and I are paying or money that we are borrowing to fund our budget. I think that it was ill-advised, and we will need this government to think differently and do differently.
Definitely. I think it's actually incredibly unfair to the people of Nigeria. It's incredibly unfair to the people you're taxing. It's incredibly unfair to both the Muslim and Christian populations who work hard to, you know, make something out of themselves, and even those who go on any type of pilgrimage. It's a personal journey. It's a personal journey between themselves and their God. It's not a journey that the government should enter. There is no member of the federal government that can come out and say in good faith that they're even doing this because they believe it's right. Even from the first president's speech, he's doing it because he believes it will score them political points. That is not what taxpayer money is for. Taxpayer money is not supposed to fuel your political ambitions, your political health. It's supposed to be for the goodness of the public. Taxpayer money is for public good. This is not a public good. They cannot tell us truthfully. They truthfully cannot, that this is actually what they should prioritize 90 billion naira for. 90 billion naira. This can never be the priority. With all the issues we have.
it's I mean, sometimes you just want to laugh, you know, and you can, to be fair, you know that politicians and those in government are dealing with subtle blackmail from powerful interest groups. But the reason why you say that you needed to be there is because you said that you could do things differently. Releasing 90 billion naira for personal pilgrimages is not the right way to go.
When we say subtle blackmail, I think this is what happens when you come in on an unpopular ticket, and then instead of trying to, unpopular according to INEC, you know, according to INEC, the opposition got more votes than our current president. However, instead of trying to shore up your political health using our money, let's just see results from the actual policies that you're supposed to be implementing, instead of trying to get cheap wins such as Hajj.
Absolutely. All right. The Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, has called on government officials to eliminate unnecessary spending to reduce the high cost of governance. Akpabio said this in Abuja at a national dialogue on the reduction of cost of governance in Nigeria. Our rights correspondent, Godfrey Esemogie, has more.
The subject of cutting the high cost of governance has been a major talking point among many Nigerians. It's even a sing-song for politicians seeking votes, and successive governments have only paid lip service at best as part of measures to address the issue. This is yet another forum where cutting the cost of governance is the main agenda. The leadership of the National Assembly, albeit represented, has made an appearance to lend its voice to the subject. Senate President Godswill Akpabio, represented by the Chairman Senate Committee on Gas, Senator Agom Jarigbe, says instead of thinking of getting a bigger slice of the economic pie, those concerned should rather focus on growing the economic pie. Akpabio therefore advocates the speedy implementation of the recommendations in the Oronsaye report.
The federal government recently approved the Stephen Oronsaye 2011-2012 report as a strategic intervention to curb the escalating cost of government. This is an encouraging step forward, but we must go beyond mere approvals. We must seek ways to situate the implementation of these recommendations within the current socioeconomic context and do this with determination and urgency.
During the event's technical session, a foremost academic and politician, Professor Pat Utomi, said the crave for the proverbial national cake is a mindset that can't just disappear.
The political politicians cannot save Nigeria. It is in the nature of the system and the structure. Those fellows who came through the Labour Party there, when they got to Abuja and everybody was collecting 160 million car, they thought, this thing that belongs to everybody, let me take my own share. They could not connect their values, their morality to the problem of 160 million naira car.
The Director General of the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies also lent a voice to the debate on cutting the cost of governance.
Let us pull the Oronsaye report into serious critique. Let us look at the merit and demerit of the Oronsaye report. Let us even look at the other areas that the Oronsaye report did not even look at. And let us, aggregate opinions of scholars and practitioners in these areas and come up with something that we can channel into governments, for them to implement.
Many speakers here say there's the need for the Nigerian government to focus on the current economic realities by reducing the cost of governance so that more citizens can be positively impacted by developmental projects. Curiously, the executive arm of government, which should have a big say on the subject of cutting cost of governance, had no solid representation at the event. Godfrey Esemogie, Arise News.
Reducing the cost of governance in Nigeria, and Senate President Godswill Akpabio has suddenly become an advocate. Isn't that wonderful?
That is curious.
Given that for many Nigerians, the way that our lawmakers have been treated, 344 billion plus or something in the budget this year for the National Assembly, and the Senate President is advocating for a cut in the cost of governance through distinguished Senator Jarigbe, our good friend, by the way. I hope that he read in full that presentation of his principal that he went, to read out there. Because if you look at what he's saying, I think I see more of politics than sense. than sincerity in what Mr. Akpabio, through Mr. Jaribe, wants us to believe. How about starting from your base? How about starting to look at the type of budget that you have? How about starting to say that, yes, the Orosanye report, we are midway into the 12-week proposition by the federal government, by saying that don't let this go one day further, before we start implementing. How about say, for example, that if we had decided that we're going to implement the Orosanye report, why allow all the DGs and the MDs of the agencies that will be scrapped anyway, to resume, and all of a sudden after 12 weeks, you probably, will get them out of the thing. I think that sincerity is lacking in what Mr. Akpabio is proposing. We know that the budget of the National Assembly, like many agencies of government, require a lot more scrutiny and pruning down.
Yeah.
We can even start from the type of legislature that we run before we start talking of the size of the government that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, brought on board, which is by far the largest, in our history. Togo has just approved, a parliamentary system of government. The Gambia is advocating for a unicameral system of government. If we agree, if we say that the conversation that we are comfortable with is that we can no longer afford, this high cost of governance, can we not start with what 50 lawmakers in the House of Reps have started with, to say that can we even afford to keep two?
Do you see our lawmakers passing a bill that will render most of them
I'm saying that is the sort of conversation that we need to hear, not platitudes like what Jaribe read on behalf of Akpabio there.
These platitudes will continue, the posturing will continue. However, I would like to see from them exactly what you said, a trimmed down budget. Mm-hmm. I want to see an industry and MDA that they have reduced the budget of. Right? I want to see them. I would like to see from the Senate President what budget within his office that he's reduced the budget of. I would like to see which one of them have reduced the number of cars in their convoy. I would like to see the number of them that have reduced their staff.
Switching official vehicles to what CNG. We assemble here, to start with.
I would like to actually see action instead of more and more conversation, because I think they believe that it is politics as usual, that conversation gets the people going. Let's say we are doing the right things and we believe in reducing the cost of government. However, you actually have the power to do the things you speak of.
That's why you're there.
Exactly. So we actually need to see you actually do these things rather than to speak to us about these things. Sometimes I feel like the legislators are speaking to us, the people, as if we're the legislators. You're the one who has been voted in. You're the one who actually has the power in the bills that you're passing, in the activities that you're partaking in the trips that you are taking, because quite a few of them have traveled a couple of times this year beyond just our president.
Absolutely.
So let them tell us that they have pulled back, that they have cut down, not that they're going to every trip they're invited to in Europe, not that they're approving the increased budget of every MDA or every ministry that approaches them. Why didn't Akpabio earlier on, when Tinubu presented a list of over 40 ministers, why didn't they say, well, this looks like a lot, this looks like the cost of government is going to go higher? Nothing was said. So instead of speaking to us, maybe speak amongst yourself and get things done.
How about the official cars? The number of cars in the official convoy, for example. That's I'm not even talking president and vice president. I'm talking the Senate president, for example. I mean, look within yourself.
Yes.
You know, of course, that we do not believe you. Many people do not believe you. I'm not sure that you believe yourself to start with. So all these platitudes and come on. I mean, we've had enough of
Let's
such.
see the action, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah.
Well, President Bola Tinubu this week received the report of the high-powered Presidential Committee on Nigeria's Extended Continental Shelf Project. This comes with a commendation to the team of experts who worked hard over the years to advance the project, which aims to extend Nigeria's maritime boundaries in accordance with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, 1982. The president expressed his appreciation on Tuesday in Abuja after listening to technical presentations by Professor Larry Awoshika, a marine scientist and member of the committee, and surveyor Aliyu Omar, secretary of the HPPC. The experts have been involved in the project since Nigeria's initial submission to extend its continental shelf to the United Nations Commission on the Limits of the Continental Shelf in 2009. They informed the president that the UN has approved Nigeria's submission, granting sovereignty over additional square meters of maritime territory.
Square kilometers, actually. The size is I understand, is about 5 times the size of Lagos. You know, what we have now gained. And of course approved by the United Nations. I commend Professor Larry Awoshika, you know, and I think that Nigeria has done well this time around. A lot of people don't understand it, you know. I mean, a good chunk of ignorant comments, you know, on social media are thinking that maybe we've gone into a country to annex their land and say the ones that we have you secured them, but this is a maritime, you know, territory, and it follows due process. They've been on it for about 6 years. Are we going to accept it? Proposition by Professor Awoshika is that let's take this first that has been granted. We have the leeway to extend our argument and our submission, but that will take another 4 years. So I think that whatever is worth for marine economy, you know, for anything at all, let's go for it. Definitely. If it's been sanctioned, I have no problem with that.
Definitely, and I honestly want to commend the team, Professor Larry Awoshika. It shows the importance of diligence, even continuation in government, right? That this has been a project since 2009, and we must be grateful for the team for not abandoning it. Absolutely. Even if most Nigerians didn't understand it, even if it's not something that was on the top of our minds. It shows the importance in people actually having experts in their field take charge over a situation, and when it's immune from political disturbances, that's when we see results such as this.
Absolutely. Fantastic. A good one. Nigeria is expanding.